Hey guys, what's going on? I'm over here in Steve's garage, and we just finished putting a 3¼ inch lift into my daughter's 2008 Jeep JK. So we ran into a few things along the way. We'll show you guys in the video what to watch out for, things you may have to do or may not have to do, and we'll get started on this thing. So as part of the kit, you're gonna get 4 coil springs, some coil spring isolators, track bar for the rear. I'll show you that in the video. A bunch of hardware, some nuts and bolts in here, and 4 replacement shocks. It's not a whole lot with the kit, it's pretty simple.
All right, we're putting a lift kit in Tony's daughter's Jeep, 3½-inch lift.
3¼
3¼ that he got from
Rough Country.
And so the top bolt on the shock is a 16mm, the nut, and then it's got a thread, it's got a 5/8 here as well, or 16mm, and it was all kind of swollen with rust. We have to really work the wrenches to get them on spray and penetrating oil, and we cracked it loose, and we'll show you what we did. But down here we're going to take this bottom one off, which is 2 18mm, and take a little pressure off of this. We didn't disconnect the link yet because I don't want the rear end to drop. I don't want the front axle to drop too much. I'm just trying to get the weight off of the front of the shock right now. We're going to take the 2 front shocks off first, and then we'll disconnect the short links right here. And we're going to be replacing these links, and in the kit they told us that we could use the rear links for the front, but we decided to go out and get some new links so that we'll have to start fresh with everything. So we're going to take this bolt off right now. We'll see if this front axle drops a little more. In the kit they're telling us to disconnect the links first, but it's kind of weird. You know, if you put the thing up so I can put my jack stand underneath the axle, it's almost too high to work on and get that out. So we're going to try and take the shock bolt off and see how this goes. Looks like it's going to... Alright, it barely dropped. Okay, I'm good with that. And of course we're going to never seize everything when we put this all back in for the new shocks and stuff. So now I've got the weight off of the shock here, and we're just going to twist this thing off. This is a slow process. I can't really get a gear wrench in here. There's no swing. We really have to work this wrench up and down to get the rust off of it, to get it to crack loose, and you can't get at it. If you look up on the top here, you've got a plastic cover underneath here that you can't get a long extension with the socket on from the top side. So we're basically just got to wrench this thing, and we're holding the wrench so it hits the metal right here, and making sure we keep it on square. We don't want anything to strip, and we have it coming loose, and basically we're going to just wrench this whole thing off. Unfortunately, the way it's going to go, there's a lot of plastic on this vehicle here. I'm not getting a torch in here to try and heat anything up. We're just going to take our time doing it. Now, of course, when we get the new shocks, we'll never seize them, and it's going to go together really quick. But this part of the process is slow. So, you know, make time to do that, and really make sure you get the wrench on the top nice and crisp and tight. And we use 2 16mm, and I really have to work that down to get the rust off. And we got it to crack loose. If you strip that and you got to get in here with a torch, there's too much plastic around here. So, and there's really no room to really cut anything here to get a sawzall in. So you're wrenching this thing off. So we soaked it with penetrating oil, and we're going to keep wrenching this until we get it off, and we'll come back to you after we have it off. We're going to take this front shock off here, and we're also going to remove the other side front shock. We're getting it now, and see if we can unthread the shock here. There it comes.
There you go.
Alright, so we got one out. We're going to use the same procedure on the other side, and it looks like this has a bushing that is... Okay, so it's got the 2-piece, yeah. Yeah, I didn't know if it was a 1-piece like the Fords. Let me just drop that piece. Yeah, here's the other piece. Alright, so we got everything out, and it's just slow going. You know, these shocks are used up, so we're not saving them. If you have new shocks on, it'll be a lot easier to come off than this. So we're going to do the same procedure on the other side. If we run into anything different with access, we'll let you know. All right, so the kit's telling us, the instructions telling us to take the 10 millimeter out of the factory bolt. And that's gonna give us a little bit of wiggle room. Not too much though, but they're telling us. So I'm gonna take this out. It's gonna give us a little bit of wiggle room on this bracket here. And we gotta wedge this thing out somehow. Let me get something to wedge it out. Let's go grab the other one, take the bolt out of this one. All right, so we just pulled that out. It looks like the directions are telling us to try and straighten this out a little bit. Now, if your line looks really crusty, you better be careful with that because it could break and you might need another flex hose. So we're gonna stop bending ours in a few minutes and see how it goes. And we'll take these wires off a little bit, so give it a little slack for the ABS sensor. Let's get the other one out and we'll do the same thing on the other side. All right, we got an 18 millimeter socket on here for the link wrench 18 as well. We have our front suspension pushed up with the bars. This one off. Looks a little bigger than 18, I think 19. Let's get the wrench. All right, so it's a 19 millimeter to hold the inside here. So the stabilizer link that's on the passenger side, we couldn't get the air gun in there, so we're just gonna wrench this one off. All right, we're taking the track bar off. We got a 21 millimeter wrench socket here. This one has a welded nut on the inside. It's got this piece of bracket. Remember, we have our axle supported here.
And this track bar wasn't part of the 3 1/4 inch JK rough country kit, but I'm opting to put this on in here so we have an adjustable track bar that'll help to prevent against death wobble and make the front end that much more beefy. Before we did this lift, over the summertime, I had rebuilt, Steve and I redid the linkage with all the Moog stuff, all the tie rod ends, so it's all brand new. And it set us up for going this route with the Jeep.
All right, so we're gonna take his pitman arm off now. We're gonna take the drag link off that's connected to it. We got a cotter pin here. And like Tony said, we had already replaced all this stuff. It should come apart, fairly easy. Now that we just jinxed ourselves saying that, we'll see. There it is. Okay. All right, so this is either a 21 or a 13/16. We happen to have 13/16 here, so kind of what we're going to go with. All right, get this nut off. We're going to get our tie rod fork and separate this. And we got our 33 millimeter socket for the pitman arm nut. And we're going to take that down and we have our press. We'll press it off. Now after we take the nut off, we're going to put a mark on the pitman arm because there's 4 flat spots on the pitman arm. We'll show you on the new one. Make sure we get it back in the same position. All right, so we'll get the tie rod fork and we'll split this now. Do not want to tear this boot. So being very careful here. Did not tear the boot. The joy of it all. Okay. All right, so now we're going to take the 33 millimeter and get the nut off on the pitman arm. So if you're looking at the pitman arm, you have 4 flat spots here. So we want to make sure that we line this up correct. So we're just going to put a paint mark on the box, say that it's going to be, on the bottom side here, just so we know on the old one and on the tooth, so that we know we're in the right area and it'll find itself on. I mean, you'd really be off and see it. We're just going to make sure. It will not go on if you don't have the keys, the 4 keys lined up on this thing. All right, right, so we put a little paint mark on it, and we know the position of the, right now the steering, you're looking straight up. This hole here is pretty much a 12 o'clock position, so we're gonna get ourselves close. I'm gonna get the press up in there now. We'll sit it in place, and then we're gonna just press this thing down, and it's nice. It's got good clearance in here to get this off. We don't have to remove the box or anything. Okay, so we got the pitman arm in position. It's centered. Did it all by hand. And we're gonna press this thing off right now. And it should go easy. See how that goes. Put a breaker bar on it, get it to pop. Yeah, let's let Tony pull on this. Told you it would come off easy. If something explodes and breaks Tony's new phone, it's not my fault. Put a disclaimer out there. Alright, should come off with the impact then, we'll switch.
Hercules, Hercules!
Alright, Tony's up.
Oh, shit.
Coming down now.
There you go.
Not easy, huh? We got our mark here, so we know that this is the bottom side, and we're going to go line this one up. And like I said, you can't put it on wrong. We're going to give that shaft a little bit of penetrating oil, and then we're going to slide this thing up.
The stock one, Rick, is Planet Fitness, and this one's Gold's Gym.
Alright, now Tony can get under here with the light and look. He'll be able to see our paint mark is lined up with the other mark. Okay, yeah, we're up. And like I said, you can't put it on wrong because there's only, well, there's 4 different ways. So we have our hole centered at 12 o'clock. We wanted it, and it lined up, and it slid right up nice and easy. So we're just gonna get the lock washer and the nut and hammer down on it. We're going to follow the rest of the instructions from the kit. I guess there's a bracket, there's something that we got to mount for the new track bar to compensate for that, the adjustable track bar, and we're going to get going on that now. All right, so there's a bracket that they're telling us that we have to use here for the drop pitman arm that we just put on. And we got to take this, the stabilizer shock off here. It's an 18 millimeter, and we're going to take that off. And then we're gonna fit that bracket on, and we'll show you how that goes on. And there's a sleeve, a spacer sleeve that's gonna go in where this piston was. It looks like everything's gonna get moved. So we'll get this off, and we're gonna dry fit the bracket on, and then we'll show you how it's gonna fit, and we'll get it bolted on. So we're gonna connect the steering arm back up into the pitman arm that we have right now. Okay. Tighten this up with the 21 millimeter. Our cotter pin is basically coming from the front through the back, and there it goes. We're gonna get a new cotter pin, tighten this up, get the cotter pin in, and we'll grease this all up before we're done today. And it looks like this thing is kind of twisted on a little bit of an angle right now. So this is what centers the steering wheel. After we get everything in, we're probably gonna have to loosen this thing up. I would like this to be a little more centered so it's not cocked right now, because it's gonna be wearing on the ball. So we'll loosen these two up before we're done today, after we get the springs in and we sit everything on the ground. I wanna see where this is gonna sit, and I would like this, to be honest with you, to sit a little straighter like that. So we'll just loosen these up, and that's gonna help center our wheel. So with the drop pitman arm, I mean, if everything goes accordingly, the wheel should still be centered, but you're messing with everything on the front end of the suspension right now. 9 out of 10, you're gonna have to tweak the wheel to get the steering wheel straight. And we'll put the tow bar on which should not have made a difference at all on our tow because we didn't move anything with the bottom tie rod in, but we're just going to make sure that we don't run into anything, you know, out of the ordinary here. So let me just snug this up. We'll put the cotter pin in, and then we want to dry fit that bracket that Tony's got to make for the pitman arm, and our stabilizer will attach to that. We're taking that off right now, and more than likely we're going to change the coil springs before we do that, but we just want to dry fit that on and see how it's going to go. So you got the track bar bracket right here, and we're just dry fitting it, sitting in place, and looks like this thing has to sit in here, and then this hole will line up here, and they give you a spacer sleeve to go here where my fingers are, and then there's a bolt hole here, and the original piston can come back up to the top after, but it looks like there's a bolt here on the top that we might have to drill a hole on, and then there's a clamp that goes in the back, like an exhaust clamp bracket that goes in there that holds this thing in place. So right now we're gonna leave this loose, and we're gonna lower the suspension, and we're gonna get our coil springs changed out right now because we're all set to change the springs. We have our pitman arm on, we have our drag link attached to the pitman arm back on, the cotter pins in, that's all torqued and tight. So we'll change the springs right now, get those in, and then we're gonna get this track bar and bracket back on, and I think we're gonna end up having to drill one hole. The instructions weren't too clear with it, so we'll get it all on. There's a bunch of hardware they gave us with it, so as we put it together, we'll let you know what's going on.
This one?
They gave us new rubbers. Pop this one out. It looks like they gave us new rubbers in the kit, so we're going to be pulling these rubbers down. We're going to have to...
The spring isolator, Steve.
Spring isolator.
Rubbers or something else.
Yeah. Okay, Tony.
That's how we got here.
Okay. So, all right, let's get these spring isolators changed out. And we're gonna grease these up. All right, they gave us this new spacer, and they're telling us to leave the old one on. I put a little grease on this thing, and we gotta slide this new spacer. I guess it'll make its own imprint on the coil spring. The other factory spring is gonna end over here where it ends up. So we're gonna clean this and grease this so we don't get any squeaking. And we just gotta get this thing up. Probably gonna tap it with a hammer to get it going up there. It fits really tight around this.
There you go.
Okay. I just wanted to put a little bit of grease. I like to put a little grease on this stuff. We're gonna put a little more where the coil spring sits. I don't want any creaking noise or anything like that. So, you know, we're gonna dry our plate over here, and we're gonna put some grease on this as well. Just a thin coat is all you need. And we'll get our coil spring to fall into the pocket here. And the end of the coil spring should end up like over in this area right here. So let's see if we got this down far enough to squeak our new coil springs in. The spring's gonna end up in this pocket over here on the very end right here. It goes right up here, and the top really doesn't matter. So we're gonna grease this all up now, and we'll dry fit the spring first to see if it looks like it's gonna go. I think we're gonna have to lower the suspension a little bit more. Putting some grease on this. I don't want any creaking noise with the spring. All right, so we found that we ended up using the spring tools to try and get us to help cheat this thing in. And so we got the coil spring sitting like this. We came over the back side of the axle with the pry bar, caught on it. Tony was pulling down as hard as he could, and I pried up, and we got it to roll to sit on here, and then we hit it with a rubber mallet to drop in place. Now the spring, we're going to take our spring tools off, and this thing, the spring is basically, should be, the end of the spring should be almost at the back here. So once we get it in place, everything's greased up like we said, we'll be able to rotate this spring back in place so it sits in the pocket. So we're going to take the spring compressors down. Now, if we would have loosened this bolt up here, you know, we may have been able to gain a little bit more function. And the other thing that they didn't talk about in the kit was we got this vent hose here from the front axle we're gonna have to move these clips up because there's one that was up on the top, close to the top up here, and here's the end of the vent right here. And this is gonna be sitting a little lower now, so we're gonna have to move these two clips up. So we have a clip that clips on here and a clip that clips on up here. And it's gonna be a little shorter now. And we'll get that all adjusted in after. So for now, we're just gonna take these off and adjust our coil spring. The other side looks like it's got more accessibility to get it in, and we may not need the spring compressor. We rotated our spring around so it's sitting in the pocket here. And this thing doesn't have a pocket. It does not sit in a pocket in the front. It's just once everything compresses, it's gonna find itself. There's a little bit of wiggle room right here. But once this thing gets in there, it's gonna find itself once the suspension is collapsed on it. But there is no, groove in the top like there was on the original Isolator, which is kind of odd. But that's what they're having us do. So this one we pried down, with the bar underneath the axle joint in here, and we were able to slip this one in, and we rotated it right in the spot. We got it all greased up. And his brake lines over here, he's got a different style than what they're showing in the kit. And this looks like it's gonna fit fine. So I'm not really comfortable bending this line. It's a little swollen. Tony's gonna get another one. And we could actually give it a little bit of a tweak down right here, just a little bit of bend. The one that they showed in the kit was different. It's not this style. This probably fits multiple years. But right now it's fully extended and it's fitting pretty well. So with the load on it and the weight up, this is gonna shorten. So I don't think we're gonna have to use the brackets that they gave us in the kit for this application. Okay, so we put the dry fitted the bracket on. They told us to put the bracket, the bolt, through the sleeve, the silver sleeve here, with the factory bolt. But the problem is the factory bolt is too short. It barely sticks through. So they gave us a bolt. I think they're just a little off on the direction. So I have the bolt that they gave us with the washer, and then it's got a washer on the back with a crush nut on the back side here, and it fits perfect. If you have the OEM one that they gave you right here, this thing barely fit through the bracket. It was too short. It barely stuck out on this side. So the longer bolt makes all the sense. And then this one, the factory one, we'll put back in over here, and look how good it fits with our factory nut. So that's how we're going with this. And it just didn't have enough thread sticking through. I wasn't comfortable with it. It was maybe an 1/8 of an inch of thread. So we're going this route with it. And we put this little bracket on right here that came with it, okay? And it's got 2 9/16 nuts with washers, bolts, and then there's a nut on the inside over here. It's just like this one. And it doesn't need a washer because it's got the serrated nut on it. So now we're gonna put this U-bolt in that they gave us. I'm gonna save this for when we put our track bar back on. And they gave us this U-bolt that comes from the back side here, and it's gonna go through the holes here. Tony's got the light right in my face.
It's all right.
Okay. All right, so we're gonna catch these. I just dropped one, that's great. And these you're gonna have to wrench to get these in here. Okay. All right, let me get the other one here. The other one comes through the bottom here. All right, feels like they got them on, but yeah, there it is. Okay. All right, so we'll run these down. We're going to tighten these evenly, just like an exhaust clamp on a car. I want to make sure that it's tightened evenly. And they're telling you to get everything together before you tighten the kit up. So what we're going to do is we're just going to snug everything up so it's a little snug, but it has a little wiggle room to it. Stepped it up. We started off with a small bit to make sure it was centered. Give it a little wobble. All right, we're going to blow all this metal off. We can get our last bolt in over here and tighten that one up, and then we can start tightening all this up. This last hole is not going to be used on our application. So we've got our bracket in here with these two, and we just haven't really tightened anything yet. All our washers are still loose. We snugged this center one up a little bit, so it drew the bracket over tighter to the coil spring over here, because we wanted to make sure our bolts goes down and get this as far over. So if you look at this, this is nice and straight, going straight down this way here. So we'll blow the little filings off. We can bolt this down. We're gonna end up with one extra bolt in the kit, and because on our application we're not using this hole right here. All right, so we got our 3/8 bolts tight here. We tightened the 15/16 bolt here, and we got the nut on the back side of it here. We thought this was a moving a 1/4 inch. We read the directions again. It's actually 1 1/4 inches. So rotating it up, and we're moving it towards the driver's side wheel, 1 1/4 inch from where the bolt is, they're telling us. So we're gonna put a tape mark on it here, or we're actually just gonna measure over 1 1/4 from here, paint mark it, and then move this over. And this will rotate up the top, and they're using this bracket that we put on for our piston now, for the stabilizer piston. So this is gonna rotate up, and then this is gonna connect over to here. We're not gonna use the original one down at the bottom, that's gonna stay there. So we'll get this done now, and we'll come back in a minute. So we got our adjustable track bar here, and just matching up the end on it, the position is correct, and our adjustment here is going to go on the passenger side. All right, so we just put the two track bars together, and the one closest to me is adjustable. So we're just trying to get them close to where the adjustment is. So we line up our bushings, we put a pole in here in the middle one, and probably come out one turn here. We're just trying to get close to, you know, the factory before we start playing around with the settings. I'm gonna sit this side in here. We have to open this side up a little bit, put it in there, and this one's gonna run up to this place, and it's already off. We have to pry the axle over to get it in. So we're gonna get set up to do that, and we'll get one bolt in place here. Probably gonna do this one first, and then adjust this other one over here. So we followed the instructions on the bracket, and we went over that stuff with you guys. And we didn't use our original hole for the steering piston. They had us use this bracket that we mounted on here with the two 9/16 bolts that come in here. And we use our original hardware to bolt this back up. They had us rotate the steering dampener bracket around to basically the bolts are going up at 12 o'clock position. And we put paint marks on here from our original marks. You can see our original marks here and here. And we measured over 1 1/4 inch. And we put paint marks on. You can see a little paint underneath there on the side. And we got that all adjusted up tight. We put the new adjustable steering arm on it that Tony bought.
Adjustable track bar.
The track bar, adjustable. And we measured it off with the original one. Now Tony was saying if you put this thing down on the ground and you turn the steering wheel, the bar will move over really easily. We lowered the truck on our jack stands, and we just took a big pry bar and we pushed like this on the frame, and the thing slid right over into place. So for us, this is the way we did it because we had it on the lift. If you're on the ground, do it like Tony was suggesting, where you can just turn the steering wheel and it'll adjust itself over. So this really worked out well for us. So now we've got our adjustable steering track bar in place, all bolted on tight. We reused the original hardware for it, and we got our steering dampener piston back on tight. Our piston's right. Our bracket for the steering piston is adjusted properly. And the only thing we have left to do is put our two links in right now. So Tony bought two new links because in the kit they suggested you can use the rear links for the front, which we could have, but we bought two new ones. I don't think they're very expensive. So we're gonna put those on, and basically the front of this thing is done. We're gonna recheck all our bolts, make sure everything's tight, and we never seized all our bolts to make sure everything would go together smooth. And we're ready to do our stabilizer links right now, and we'll show you once we get those on. We'll get the sleeves adjusted to where they're supposed to be, and we'll snug these up, and we're probably gonna adjust them up in this position right here. It seems like it gives it the most clearance. We'll adjust them up like this. We could do them this way, but as you tighten them up, the bolt's gonna lengthen, and it shouldn't move. This isn't really gonna move, but we'll get them so that they're like this, and it gives us the maximum amount of clearance. All right, so we got the stabilizer links. Tony just set them in place, and we're gonna adjust these up. We got 18mm wrench here for both sides. We got everything never seized, and we're gonna tighten this up. The wrench in here. These are pretty cool. They got grease fittings on them, and so now we'll tighten this up. We never seized everything, so when we put the weight on this thing, these things are gonna just move up easily. So we can just snug these up here. There's no washers with these, huh?
Nope.
Oh, so it goes right against that hard rubber. Not sure I like that. We're gonna see if we have a washer for that. Let's take this off. All right, so they didn't give us any washers in the kit, and this has a washer built in it, but I figure it's gonna dig in at some point, so we put a full washer on there. Let's just tighten this thing up now and be done with it. I'd suggest to use a new washer, a bigger washer with it. So just get a little snug, and then the same thing. This one here, I'm gonna have to wrench. There's no room to get in here, so I'll put the wrench on this one and then tighten this one down with the ratcheting wrench. So far, the kit's gone together pretty nice. Remember, we added the extended pippin arm on it, and Tony got the adjustable traction bar on it, track bar on it. Just like that up good. And our brackets here did not need to get changed. We didn't have to put the extension brackets on. This is gonna go like this, and we have plenty of drop with these. Tony's gonna get new ones anyways, and we'll fully extend this down when we have this bolted back on, and let's see where this works out. We may be able to just bend this down a little bit here. So we're gonna get these bolted back on. So the way the vent hose is working for our front axle, we just took the clip and we moved it up an inch. And we're gonna snake it back up in place here. Tucks behind here. And this slid up into this spot right there. And then our other clip, we didn't have to really move, and we just slid it back over in here. Okay, so we got our new shock. Now they came with two different rubbers here. So the rubber's just got this one with the groove. This is gonna be on the bottom with the washer right here. And then this will sit on the top with the other washer and the nut. Let's finagle this thing in here. I'm sure Tony wants the rough country sticking out. All right, so we got that in the hole. I'm gonna try and thread it as far as I can with the shock like this until the piston starts spinning. Like right now, it's about as far as I can go with it. Now I'm gonna have to wrench the rest of this thing, and it looks like a 9/16 wrench. So we're gonna wrench that. You should be able to get a gear wrench in here and snug this down and bottom it out. I centered my boot there, so that's good. And then after we put the thing back, the stands back under the axle as we lower it down, we can line these up to get these to go into the bushings here. But I want to get these tight for now, starters, because if I catch this, I have a distance here. I'm going to really be pulling down on it. It's going to make it more difficult for me to tighten this. Having it like this, it's easiest way to tighten this thing up. Plus I centered my bushing. I know it's not going to move. So I'm going to tighten this up with the 9/16 gear wrench, and then we'll get our bolts through here at the end. Okay, we're going to tighten our 18 up here. And turn the wheel. Okay, that was tight. We can go do the other one. Yeah, come in from over here. Okay, and on the washer on the top, Tony can see this. As we tighten the nut up, the 9/16 nut, you just want the rubber to be about the same when you're squishing it down, just about the same size as the silver washer underneath. And it doesn't have to be completely cranked down on it. So we kept the same distance on each stud, which the thread that's sticking up above the nut is probably 5/8 of an inch. And that's kind of where we felt we were good with. We're gonna wipe everything down now so it looks nice and clean. and the front of this lift kit is done. Now the hoses, our brake hoses, we just tweaked this brake hose out a little bit away. It's close to our spring right now, so we're just gonna kind of bend this thing over a little bit. Okay, that's away from our spring a little more. Let's go check the other side. Now this one is touching the shock, okay? So we're gonna do the same thing. We mounted the bolt back up. We're just gonna bend this gently over. And we wanna make sure that all of our clearances are away from the shock and anything that's gonna be moving, okay? And after you get your wheels back on this, you wanna give this a double look to make sure this is good. Now we didn't have to use the extensions on this one. It fit really good. And we were telling Tony, we were noticing, so look at the brake line here. See how this has a rubber sleeve on it? And look at the size of it, it's pretty much even. It's starting to swell a little bit over here, but now let's go look at the other side. Look at how this one has swollen up. So this brake line is swollen. I've seen these blow right off. This is like an old Ford Bronco style from my '96 Bronco. So we're gonna get a couple of hoses for this. And this bottom one's starting to swell a little. So if you see your flex hoses like this swollen, you really want to change these out. So we'll spray these with fluid today, and we're going to change these soon at another day. And we have plenty of line here, and all of our front end is extended right now. So this is about as low as it's going to go. We're going to grease these right now, and after we get the rear part of it all done and we set it on the floor, we're going to adjust the shock bar, and then we're going to make sure that our steering bar here, the steering wheel is centered. And we'll grease everything up that has a grease fitting on it right now while we're there. All right, so we're going to take the rear shocks off and get the rest of the lift kit in. So we got two 18 millimeters here, and then on the top we got two 16 millimeters, and it's really nice. The nut is welded to the top up here, which is great. So we cracked one loose already. We should be able to get a short extension up here with the impact and zip these things right off. So let's get going. And let's try and zip these top ones off now. We got one shock off. All right, we're going to take the track bar off here. We have the rear end all supported. We have a 21 millimeter socket. And this has one of those nuts on the back. Pull this out. We're going to get the other one off too. Take the track bar right out. Looks like it's in the way of the coil spring on the right hand side. So I'm going to go up with this here. Track bar's out. There's going to be a bracket that's going to get attached to this side. I'm just going to give this a little bend so it's got a little room. Slide that out. And we'll set this on the floor. This is where it came out, so we won't forget. Now we should be able to lower these down here so that we can get the coil springs to pop out. And we'll see if that's going to work out for us. All right, so before we drop our axle down, we're going to get the sway bar links off the 18 millimeters. All right, so we got an 18 millimeter nut here. We got our 19 millimeter wrench on to get the link off. All right, that one's off. Let's go get this one off over here. this stuff separate. Get this off here. Okay, this link's down and out. Okay, this one's down and out. Now we should be able to lower the axle down. Now our vent hose right here is pretty damn tight, okay? And we follow this thing up, and we're gonna have to get the light over here and see where this thing is going. And it looks like it goes up over here with the light. Let's take a look. And it's got some type of clip right here that it looks like it's fastened into with this button plug. And we're gonna try and pop this button plug out over here and see if this gives us any room to get this hose to go down. We need some slack out of this hose. And this is the end of the vent. You can look right here. So what we could probably do is slide this down in the hose here and leave the clip in place. But it seems like something's holding the hose up. Oh, right here, look, we got a clip, guys, right here. We just pushed that up, and now we got some slack in the hose. So we should be all right, and we can push down on the vent up here a little bit, and this should give us a little bit of wiggle room here. I think it's taped in here or something. Yeah, it's taped, but it's got a clamp right here, so okay, we got a little wiggle room now in this clamp here. Okay, we're just gonna pop this one out. There's your rubber. Same thing with this one. All right, we're gonna disconnect the two brackets here for the flex hoses. We can probably bend these down a little. We're gonna see where they end up going. After we get the new springs in, see how we fit. Same thing on this side. Okay, now we can lower it down more. So we're gonna pop these off here. That's giving us slack there. We're gonna pop this one off. All right, I got a pretty good amount of slack here now. Let's see where our coil springs go. I wanna go wipe this all down. I'm gonna grease our plates here. Okay. All right, so we got our stock isolator. I gotta put a little grease on here. I got it on the top side here. I'm just gonna put a little on here. What I don't like so far is like this is a softer rubber and it's got a groove in here for where the spring would sit. The new ones don't. They're just harder plastic. So I guess it'll just find its way. So sit this one on top like that. Push this up the top here and we can pry down on the axle. We gotta get a pry bar. See if we can pull down a little more on this side here. Just about there. Okay, we got our coil springs in, and they're telling us to put the bolts through the sway bar links this way here. And they gave us bushings in the kit. And I gotta go grab those. These bolts are a little tight. Going through this bracket, almost don't feel like they want to go in. We have to try and tap them. Let's see how this one fits. Yeah, I'm gonna try and tap it in, see if it goes in. So let's try that. I gotta get the two bushings for the links. So let me go get a hammer and try and tap these in. You might have to read these out a little bit with a drill bit, but we'll see. See if they can go in. All right. Of course they don't fit. Hey. All right, so we took a 1/2-inch drill bit, reamed out our holes, probably just the paint hanging us up. The heavy put a sleeve on, pressed this in. We never seized everything up. this is really tight going through here. So we have to put these bushings in the links. They didn't come in the link already, which is kind of weird, but so we got to press these in. Just want to get them centered so that they're already all the way in. We got a 17 millimeter socket, and I'm pressing them in. Okay, get them so they're flush like that. All right, this one's done. So we reamed out our stabilizer bar with the 1/2-inch drill bit. We pressed our bushings in there, and then this one's going to go through here. Once we lift up the ass end, we'll be able to get this one in. I got them all never seized up. We want the bolts coming away from the wheel, going in like that. And I got these in here. And we get the washers, tops, and the nut. Let's catch the other one. Washer and the nut. Okay, now we can start jacking up the rear axle here. All right, we're pulling the track bar down. And we got our bolts going through here. We got our washers here. So we got a 19 and a 19. So let me get a 19 socket. We're going to tighten these all up. As soon as it tightens up, it's sucking it into the axle here, so we'll tighten it by hand. A wrench. Tighten this top one. Okay, same thing with this one. This one looks like the same thing. You just run it down and we'll finish tightening it with our 19 millimeter wrench because it's sucking the socket into the bracket here. All right, so we followed the directions in the kit, and they told us to put the track bar on last night before we put this bracket on, and now then you can't get the bracket in place. So we have to drill a hole right here for the track bar. So we have it up in place, so all our holes are lined up perfect. We put the bolts in just for now. I'm gonna take a paint mark. We're gonna mark the inside of the hole in here, and then we're gonna have to remove the bracket and drill this hole. I can't get my DeWalt drill, the head's a little too fat to fit down in here. You know, if they had a smaller chuck on it, I guess you could get it in, no big deal. So we're just gonna take these two 3/8 bolts out, and we just paint mark that thing. We're gonna drill it down. They want you to step it up to like a 13-30 seconds hole, and you're gonna use basically a 3/8 bolt in there with nuts and washer. So we'll take the bracket off and we'll drill this hole and come back here. So we got our hole drilled here, and we got our bracket to sit on. So 13-30 seconds it said. I'm just gonna sit the bracket's got a little notch on it right here so that it fits right over here. Just trying to slide this thing down. That's pretty close right there. Push these two through, and I had to use a pair of needle nose pliers to catch this top, the top one here. I got to go over the top with it here. I was able to sneak the washer on, but not so much the not unless I hold it with the pliers. I'm gonna put the bottom one on. And we gotta get this bolt here. Let's go grab that one. It's another one just like these. And that'll bolt on for this. And we'll get this one in place and bolted on, everything dry fit, and then we'll show you where we're at.
And okay.
All right, so we got our bracket in place. We got our hole drilled, the 13/32. We got the bolt coming down, washer, nut. Same thing on this side over here. Now they're telling us to put a spacer in here, and it's an 80 millimeter. They give you 2 fat bolts like this. It's the longer of the 2 fat bolts is the 80 millimeter. They want this sleeve put in here to reinforce this, and line that up, put it in, and we got a washer on the nut side, and we're gonna put there's a washer on the front side here, and we're gonna put one over here. And after we get all of this in place, we'll, I can get my fat fingers in here, we're gonna get the everything tight on this thing. And at this point, we can tighten everything up, and this bracket will be solid. And then we can put the track bar. Boy, it looks tight to get this track bar back in place. I hope this works out, because it really looks like I'm gonna have an issue here. So we're gonna have to figure that out, because the direction said that you could actually slip this bar in place, and it doesn't look like it to me. So to be honest with you, and I'm not sure what we're gonna do yet, but this bolt is in my way right now of this track bar bracket, and this thing is welded on, and there's nothing we can do about this. So we'll see what the directions say, but it said it would bolt right on. So we got this all together the way they're telling us to do it, and we put the bolt in here, and it hits the bolt, and even with the bolt out, if we're lining up the hole, it's not lined up. So we put a paint mark on it over here, and we're gonna cut the bracket across here, drill another hole right here. We have all the support here and all the support here, but out of the 2 track bars that we only got 1 set of links, I should say, with the kit, and they're longer. So it's not like this. If this track bar was narrower here, it may fit, but it doesn't fit. So we're gonna have to cut this straight across here, and then drill another hole through it, and it's going to be close to the back of the track bar in here, but we're going to get it, and that's our only option, to be able to push this in, because even with the nut, even with the bolt out of it, it just does not reach. So we're going to trim the bracket a little bit and drill an extra hole, and I don't know if it's just our application. Tony says this is specific to this vehicle. No one else has talked about this. We don't see another way around this. I mean, this bracket cannot fit behind this bracket here, because of the way the angle comes down here. It would hit the metal here. So there's no option for us but to trim this off and then re-drill a hole.
So this is a 2008 JK. So who knows after this year, or if Jeep had changed that hole to be further out a little bit. I mean, anything's possible. I've been a product manager in automotive for a lot of years. I've seen a lot of stuff happen. And but on this particular year, this is what we're running up against, right, Steve?
Yeah, so we're gonna have to unfortunately modify. We haven't had to do anything modifying with the kit. And Tony was talking earlier that we've seen another video online, and they're talking about the hockey pucks up here. And we have the first plastic puck that came with the kit, and they're saying to sit that on the coil spring and leave the original rubber one up on the body. And we read the directions 3 times a Sunday here, and that's the way they're telling us to do it, and that's the way we did it on both the front and the rear. All right, so we're basically cutting off 2 inches with the whizzer cutter, and we're gonna just grind this down so it's nice and neat. We're gonna drill the hole where the other spot is right here, and we'll do the same thing. We'll once we get this back in place, we can drill it, and this is just taking up space that our link is hitting. Our track bar link will not fit with this. We've looked at it 6 different ways to Sunday, and it ain't working. So this is the only thing we've had to do with the kit. I'm not really sure why. The ear that's on the rear axle that the link goes through is factory. Don't know if there's something different with a different rear end in it, but it's not working. So we'll have 2 bolts here, plus we have all the support from here. We have the bolt coming down through this way, and we also have this going through the original track bar with the sleeve. There's plenty of support in there. We're not worried about it. So we're just gonna finish trimming this thing off and get going. All right, so we trimmed our bracket over here and with a little color on it, around the edges, so it looks like it came from these guys. But what Tony was just educating me on is that this bracket has 3 different holes for 3 different lift kits sizes that you can put in. And he said, what was it, 2, 4, and 6?
It's something like that. Top one's 6. The bottom one is, I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's 2.5 to the 4-inch lift. So we're running the 3 1/4. So
I'm not sure if this bracket is kind of a universal thing they're using, but in our application, we just tighten these 9/16 up. We have our thing, the sleeve in here, and we have our 9/16 down here tight the way they wanted it. And right now, if you look at our drag link, as it goes down, the hole's gonna line right up.
yep.
And we're gonna just tighten this bolt right now, and then we're gonna put our drag link bolt in, and we'll be past this point. Fits like it should have, huh?
Yeah.
It's all right though.
You know, this 2008 is the 2nd year of production of this model year, so they change things. You know, it's just, who knows? After this year, this might not be an issue, or maybe it's just an issue in my Jeep. I don't know. I haven't heard anybody complaining about the fitment of that bracket, but that's what we ran into, right, Steve?
Yeah, and these are a couple of 19s, I believe, to tighten this thing up.
Yeah. And if the hole on the factory year was out another 1/4 inch further, it probably would have been fine. We wouldn't have to do this, but
Yeah. So we're just gonna snug this up now. We get our washers back on it. And it's got plenty of clearance in here. You can see it jiggling here, so it's not rubbing. So we'll just tighten this up. Kind of a tight area with getting a socket in here. You try putting the socket on, it binds up against this bracket, so we're just wrenching it on. All right, so we got all our links in now. We got our bracket on. We're gonna get the track bar and get that in place. And then the last thing it looks like we gotta do is do the shocks. Then we just gotta make sure that we're getting good clearance on all our emergency brake cables. We're gonna put some weight on this thing and see where all this stuff sits fine. And then we might have to do a little more adjustment with this bracket up here, because we pull down on these brackets a little bit to get this stuff. You know, you can pull. This is going to be, you know, we can manipulate this. You know, if we bend this stuff over here, we just don't want stuff rubbing on the springs. And you look at the old marks; these were originally rubbing on the springs. You can see it. So we'll try and get this so nothing rubs. And so let's get ready to slip the track bar on. Flipping the track bar back in place now. Come on. Okay, get that one. Tony said this one's going to be in the bottom. We're going to have to push this over to get this thing to come in play, because our bolt right here is not, it's about a half a hole off. So we're going to have to shift the rear end over. So we can do that. We're going to get a pry bar and find something to pry on here. And let's see if we just push. Yeah, it's moving.
okay.
Yeah, it's pretty much there.
Without too much effort.
So we're gonna slip the rear shocks in, and we got our factory bolts that we're reusing. Of course, we never seized everything up. And let's see if we can get these holes to line up. I think I'm trying to thread one of my bolts in first. And then catch that on there. Yeah, that works. Go up. Get my arms in here somehow. and just get the extension. I got these two started. I'm gonna get the bolt on the bottom pushed in first. And I know Tony wants the nameplate sticking out, so that's what we're gonna do. We got the new bolt here. It's gonna come in. And we gotta jack the rear end up a little bit to get the holder line up. Yeah, when you look at that, the bolt for the stabilizer link, they told us to go in this way, is hitting the shock. We got to change this around, and it's probably going to be the same on the other one as well. Maybe we put it in wrong, but I didn't think so. We'll go look at the directions. All right, so we got the bolt for the stabilizer link has to come in this way, and we got the shock in here now. Line that up. Let's get the nut on it. These are 18s on the bottom and a 16 on the top. You want to try and center these if you can. See how they're moving around a little? Get them so that they're kind of in the center. So you're grabbing about the same amount of meat on both sides. Let's snug these up and take a look and see. Yeah, there you go. And they're moving around a little bit. Okay. Yeah. Probably doesn't matter. I just want them centered. Alright, so I tighten these 16s up. Never seized everything. Alright, bottoms are 18s. Okay, we don't have much clearance in here, but it's enough on the side over here. But that's enough. And alright, so we're going to pop the other shock in. And then we still have to adjust our brake lines over here. They give you some metal to adjust these down. And we're gonna get these adjusted probably into this position here so they're away from the tie rods. And this is pretty much the lowest end. And then we also have to move our vent hose, which is here. And it came up over the top over here. And you can see it on this side, Tony. And they have like a little tie wrap right here, a little plastic strap, but it's not long enough to reach. And we can't have it rubbing on the hose. So we're gonna pull it back a little bit and center it, and we can put a tie wrap right here so that it's gonna clear this stabilizer bar. So this position, we're gonna tie wrap and it's gonna stay in this position here. And then we have to just recheck everything else for all our clearances. So here's the end of the vent hose. And it originally had a clip on it. It was hooked up to the side of the metal over here, but it's too short. So we moved the factory clip down a couple of inches from where its original position was. And the way we can tuck this now, we can tuck it back up and up over the frame here. Just gotta fish it up there so it goes free. There it goes. And then slide it right up here. Okay, there's my clearance. I don't have to tie wrap nothing. I got the original factory clip. I got plenty of clearance right here. All right, I'm happy with that. We're gonna get the other shock in, and we just gotta extend the brake lines a little bit. Now we're gonna bolt this on. They give you in the kit that factory bolt here. And I'm just gonna pull the brake line, get this adjusted so that it sits just like this. With this 1/4-20 that they give us in the kit, I got a washer and a locking nut, and this is going to fit really nice. put the nut on the back. All right, so we got a 7/16 socket and wrench. I'll tighten this up right here. And then tighten our factory 10mm up. Now, this actually has some clearance here, which I'm okay with, okay? And this has clearance here. Wow, this fits really good. So just using that straight bracket gave me clearance here, so there's nothing rubbing. It's got the same amount of space as this. I'm happy with that. And this is tight, and I got finger clearance up in between here. So we're gonna throw the other side on, and we'll get the tires on, and we'll show you after we have the tires on, make sure there's no clearance issues with anything, and yeah, we'll go from there. So we got the lift kit in the Jeep, and we double checked everything to make sure nothing's rubbing. We have to do a little tweak in the brake line on the left-hand side. It bend a little bit to make sure when you turn the wheels hard to the right and the left that the clearance is all there. Everything's tied out of the way. We went over the vent holes in the back. We used the brake line extensions they gave us in the kit for the rears. That worked out good. Getting back to the front end, so we have the back all done. We're happy with that. The emergency brake cables aren't rubbing on anything. We have to bend those factory metal brackets that attach the floor forward and that pull the cables away. So everything in the back was good. Tony got adapter plates for the wheels and pulled them out. What do you think? 2 inches?
They're 1.5 inch wheel adapters.
Yeah, 1.5 inches, okay. And then as far as the track bar that we put on, which adjusts the axle to the left and the right, to center it on the body of the vehicle, we, wondering how we're going to do that. So we put a level up against the tire, and then we have a 1/2 inch distance in here, and we wanted to see, we were close, and we got lucky. We're a 1/2 inch on this side as well. So we have the same distance. So we went out and drove it, and we're happy with our distance here. So we adjusted the toe in on it, and the toe I didn't think would have to change it for some reason, whether the customer banged the curb with it or whatever, but the toe was towing out 1/4 inch. So we adjusted the toe to a 1/16 in, and the last thing we did was adjusted centered our steering wheel, and we adjusted the tie rod sleeve from the pitman arm over, and we got the steering wheel centered right where we want it. Driving it down the road, it drives nice and straight. And now, when you look in, we were talking about the tie rod on the pitman arm. Remember how we were saying we wanted that flush and flat and square looking? And it is now. It was cocked before. So you want that in that position right there. So everything's double checked and tight. And Tony's going to be bringing back some work in a few weeks. And we'll double check to make sure that, nothing's settled on it, and we'll recheck this torque bar to make sure that the steering to make sure this axle is centered on the body. And besides that, the only modifications we had to do was that one bracket on the rear axle for the strut, the stabilizer bar on the back there.
Yep.
And we showed you how we fabricated that. That was the only thing. Not really sure why we had to do it, but that was the only modifications that we made with the kit. But Tony did buy the pitman arm and the adjustable drag link. And I would definitely advise to do the pitman arm for 100% sure. And the adjustable drag link is a good thing too. So that pretty much rounds this thing up. We checked all our tire pressures and drove it down the road. It stays nice and straight.